Deepak, is it any better?
Oh, much better. Much better. Yeah.
Thanks. Thanks. Sandeep, is it better for you as well?
Yes, yes, very clear. Yeah, please.
Good. So, Sandeep, Deepak, as we discussed around the topic, as I was discussing with you, so I thought of checking with Deepak and Vineet also, and you also joined. So, business complexity and investment style. So, to set a context, Sandeep, can you help me so that we can gain from Deepak's experience on that? I mean, more
So,
what
I
the
mean,
discussion.
so essentially, agenda and Dr. Vismaya is also there. I mean, I don't think she has spoken in public so far. At least I haven't heard. But if she wishes to join, at least her writing shows that she has good thought process about most of the investment. So a few things. I mean, Prince, this is a very widely debated topic, and the debate happens because there are always two views. I mean, there can't be a debate on where there is a conclusion already, right? So by nature of being a progressive person, person who thinks about it, all of us. Should realize that there is a topic because there are views, right? So discussion is never to conclude. Discussion is to just understand the various shade of the topic. So the topic today, which I think Prince is trying to cover, is around different investment styles, and some people essentially love the complexity, more hot sectors, new themes, innovation driven kind of a thing. And naturally, there is a space for those kind of organizations and investments. Similarly, there are a lot of people who have the flair for relatively easier business, simpler business, and depending upon what kind of a style you follow, you have typically inkling for one over another kind of a thing. So that's the general context. So just to discuss that, those shades, like when we choose certain investments or certain companies as portfolio companies, when it comes to business complexity versus simplicity, what do we do? And see, one thing is quotations, right? Whether you quote Munger or Buffett, that is one thing. Second thing is your actions. So, right. So we'll probably focus more on what we actually do rather than what we think we want to do, kind of a thing. So maybe just to open it up, Deepak sir, if based on your journey as an investment banker and then subsequently as an individual big investor, when you choose company, what are your criterias about choosing a business per se, even before going into, let's say, promoter or balance sheet, etc. Are you broadly, in a sense, not very sector specific also? So over to you.
Thanks, Sandeep ji and Prince. So this is a very good topic, which is very relevant, and most of the times we don't think about this, but we directly or indirectly follow it. So I'll just take a step back. Like, of course, business complexity and investment style are completely interlinked. And as I said, we directly or indirectly do follow it. Like complex businesses needs active participation and deep dive in understanding of the sector and the complexity around it. They are more risky and of course they are more rewarding. Simple businesses suitable for passive investing, less risky, usually less rewarding. So like, I mean, my personal style, I don't understand big conglomerates because they have presence in so many countries. I can't follow it. And it's beyond me. I mean, it's very complex. I don't have that much time. So I avoid investing. Chemicals, conglomerates, biotech, aerospace, pharma, to some extent, artificial intelligence. These all needs a lot of sector expertise, a lot of networking, lot of time. It's beyond me. Usually, I invest in India, which is easy to follow for me. I'm here. I can reach out to anyone. Consumption sector, daily consumption need items. But it's up to you, honestly, as an individual. Do you have time? Do you have sector expertise? Are you able to network properly? What's your kind of return expectations? Of course, I did invest in one of a very complex business, and it's been amazingly rewarding for me. It's in India. It's related to SMS, phishing, online fraud. But unless you sit with the promoters, with the management, or you sit with some analyst and understand in depth, I don't think you can crack it. You will see the returns from complex sectors not immediate. It usually takes time and a lot of things needs to fall in place. Uh, as a normal investor, you will lose your patience and get out of it. So you need to have that long-term vision and understanding of the sector to crack a very complex sector.
Perfect. Vineet bhai, you want to probably more as a businessman, also as a big entrepreneur himself. I mean, why did you choose certain sector? Is it like family pedigree, your comfort, and then even when you explore other businesses, what are the criteria you try to look into? And this is just
Sure,
your
sure.
experience versus others' experience, kind of a thing.
Sure, sure. Thanks, Sandeep bhai. Thanks, Prince. For some reason, I think I'm not able to hear Prince, but I'll just go ahead. So Sandeep bhai, basically, so my family, we initially had this defense business, which is still very much on, but we are focusing now more on the chemical space. So just adding on to what you said, see, and what Deepak bhai also said. So complexity in businesses is there, but the returns are also made, where things are complex and it's not very easy to read. So like in our case, because of chemicals, you would have seen, how the China dumping has been impacting chemicals in India on an overall basis. One of our key customer segment is pharmaceutical, and
Vineet, you there?
I think we have lost him. Maybe he will. Vineet, if you can hear us,
hello,
you,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, please go ahead.
yeah. So Sandeep, bhai, basically, so in pharma, so also there are also, the different sections within business and how to do that. So how we deal with it from a business standpoint is we try and diversify as much as we can, not in terms of product, but in terms of market. So now we have started supplying more on the export side. So we are exporting our product to Europe, to America, to Latin America, and so on, because our product is specialized, so it is not available in all the countries. So that kind of, gives us more variety in terms of market. It also helps us overcome the working capital challenges, because in India, usually, even with the pharma players, some of these marquee MNC names, the payments tend to get delayed. So that also is a challenge. But in case of exports, that is far more easier to manage. Now, when we overlay this on investment style, so then, I look for companies which are also doing similar things, wherein, they are de-risking, they are getting into more geographies. Even though they may not be diversifying in product, they would look to diversify in terms of customers, in terms of markets that they serve, because that gives them an added advantage. It gives them more agility and flexibility as far as servicing their customers is concerned. So that is one angle, you can kind of look at when you are looking at different investment styles.
Thank you, Vineet.
Yeah.
Health is wealth is speak. If you want to add something from your perspective.
Correct. So on this, I think it's a very, very important point you've made. So as they say, I mean, as long as you are healthy,
No, no, no,
there
no,
are a number
Vineet,
of
Vineet,
problems.
Vineet. Sorry, it has become a little bit of a joke. Sorry. So there was a handle, and that's why I mean I request people to put their names, but for some reason they love. So there was a speaker, Health is Wealth, and he came as a speaker. So I requested him. Vineet, you must have thought, what is the googly I'm trying to give it to you? Suddenly, where is the health coming? And you, being a polite person, you still try to answer. So Prince, I'll probably add. I think he dropped as a speaker till he joins back. And before even talking about how I see, I mean that's less of importance. I personally try to, read even different people. So I just did a tweet like 15-20 minutes back, and this was on the back of a discussion I was having with a family friend here yesterday over dinner. I mean, most of my tweets are around the topics which I actually discuss with people, and then I try to put up some data just to talking to myself more like a audit trail of what I think, kind of a thing. So this tweet was famed fund managers, their AUM concentration style, and their 3 year returns, right? So we all think of Warren Buffett as some kind of a very big, popular, very successful investor who he is. More than that, his style of investing has had huge impact, and that is why he's quoted. He's like a cult figure, right? But if you'll see his returns, which has been very good, but then to appreciate those returns, you need to understand the context, few other contexts. Surely, as a if someone is relatively new in the market, veterans obviously understand why Warren Buffett is Warren Buffett. First of all, his risk, even though he does not follow any complex strategies, it is usually a very long-term portfolio. Usually, it has also a limitation of excluding a lot of sectors. So he famously skipped entire technology spectrum, and that has been huge wealth creator in USA. The entire beat 2000 or even 2010 onwards, Fang, till very late he picked Apple, and in fact, bulk of Apple market cap started only after uh, Buffett picked it, because he gave the tadka of financial engineering, debt, taking debt and doing buybacks and those sort of things. Even though the underlying asset of the company was so solid, the next 2 trillion got fast tracked once the Buffett uh, color came into the picture. And then obviously he has taken a small here and there on Snowflake and all. So when we have to understand Buffett, we have to see one on the number of years he has done, almost 50, 60 years. Second, we have to see his size, 280 billion. Third, we have to see the strong lack of correlation with S&P, even though he's investing in S&P. See, you can be a gold trader or you can be a multi-asset trader or multi-country trader, and then you claim to have a low correlation with S&P returns. So your exposure is very correlated with S&P, but your returns are not so correlated. So he's finding out diversification in returns without doing the diversification in the style. And that is where his magic is, right? And that is based on some very core first principles. Simplicity is one such principle for him. And second is long-term focus. So simplicity, by which he means if he can't understand anything, and when he says I can't understand, please understand he's no less IQ person, right? He can understand anything. I mean, if he wants to, he can understand AI semiconductor also, to the extent any investment manager needs to understand. But he probably puts a very high bar of what he wants to understand, right? So that's why most of his investment has been, income. I mean, when he picked Apple, he didn't pick it as a tech play. He picked it as a consumer play. He picked Apple when he realized that it is now in everyone's hand and unlikely to be get out of everyone's hand. He very basically said, the day I realized कि iPhone सबके हाथ में आ चुका है, means 1/4 of the world, or especially the rich people or anybody, it has become that aspirational value कि जैसे ही आपके पास पैसा आएगा आप iPhone पे स्विच मारोगे, और एक बार स्विच मारोगे तो हटोगे नहीं, और वो उसका इकोसिस्टम बन चुका है. तो फिर वो कैश फ्लो इंजन हो गया. तब उसको ग्रोथ के लिए फंडिंग नहीं चाहिए, इनफैक्ट वो बायबैक करता रहेगा. तो जब उस Warren Buffett realized that simple thing about Apple, right? That's when he joined Fang. So this is his style. I'm again not saying this is the only style, right? If we switch to the same list which I'm talking about in my tweet, uh, there are funds like Millennial, right? Very famous fund. In fact, इस समय आईवी लीग जितने भी यूएस के कॉलेजेस हैं, उसमें कैंपस हायरिंग के लिए ये फंड्स लाइक सिटाडेल्स, मिलेनियल, ये सब लोगों के लिए एस्पिरेशंस हैं. So people will join Amazon and Google and Palantir only if they are not hired by, let's say, Renaissance or Millennium or Citadel, right? So they are literally at the edge of the quant finance in the world, right? And they are managing sizable money also. So you can see literally hundreds of billion. Citadel 200 billion, Renaissance is 60 billion, Millennial is 120. So they are not no small by any size. Again, they are generating 50%, 20%, 35%, but their strategies are diversified, in a sense, quant strategies, right? So one interesting thing someone was, I think Abhishek Mehta was asking, what is the turnover means? So if you see that table which I'm talking about, but Warren Buffett has a turnover of 9.3%, which in simple word means if he has 20 stocks in his portfolio, in fact, he has 41 stocks, probably he will shuffle only 4 in a year, right? But there are other people who are typically doing more like a 30, 40% kind of a churn, right? In India, Quant Fund has done exceptionally well in spite of having a very major churn. So that's on the churn style. Coming back to the simplicity, uh, इसी में जो स्टार कॉन्ट्रास्ट है वो है आर्क. तो यूएस में आप में से बहुत लोगों का यूएस एक्सपोजर होगा, एंड आई एम अज्यूमिंग सम ऑफ यू आर आल्सो ज्वाइनिंग इट कॉल्स फ्रॉम आउटसाइड ऑफ इंडिया. बट इन यूएस ड्यूरिंग कोविड, Kathy Wood was a cult, and she is still. If you hear her interviews, if you hear her investment thesis, you'll realize that she gets it, right? In fact, she famously said that we don't want to hire equity research guys who comes from finance background. We want to hire equity research guys who come from those business areas. So you want to hire someone in, let's say, genetics or etc. You don't hire a equity research guy as in a CA or a CFA or a MBA finance. You basically hire someone um, who is PhD and who has worked in pharma area or genetics area and those kind of a thing. So she has given a huge weightage to the functional expertise while doing the research. But end of the day, investment is a lot of things beyond businesses also, and especially beyond complexity of the business. So these are some of the data points I wanted to put. I don't just to avoid giving a very long take on this. Back to you, Deepak bhai, and then I can talk about my focus also. But उससे पहले एक चीज मैं छोटा सा clear कर देता हूँ. I see a lot of vitriol. Our debates are very uh, um, tense debates or threads or discussions on investment style. For me, investment is like your journey towards God, and obviously everyone will have very different style. इतनी basic understanding सबको होनी चाहिए. So when we say I do this and you do that way, it is more to for fun of discussion. It is never about someone else is wrong and you are right, or you were earlier wrong but now you are right and now you're dead sure for next 20 years you will be right. Maybe 1 year down the line, you will switch your styles. So please वो एक बेसिक अंडरस्टैंडिंग रखिए कि इस तरह का कोई भी डिस्कशन इस इंटेंट से नहीं हो रहा है कि ये स्टाइल सही है और वो स्टाइल गलत है. इट इज मोर टू हियर फ्रॉम डिफरेंट पीपल व्हाई दे चूज सर्टेन स्टाइल ओवर अदर स्टाइल्स. So over to you, Deepak, sir.
Yeah, I completely agree, Sandeep bhai. So, my perspective is, and I've already always made money when I kept things very simple. And let me give you a local example, India का example. इंडिया में पैसा इन्वेस्टर ने किस में कमाया है? तीन सेक्टर में, आईटी, फाइनेंशियल्स और कंजम्पशन. Even Rakesh bhai, the god, like Warren Buffett equivalent in India, he kept, I think, things very simple. Just that he was early to spot on and he held on to things. So I think if for a normal person with not much of expertise and time, because everyone has some other commitments, job, etc. Not everyone is full-time investor. And even for a full-time investor, I mean, what's worked for me, कीप इट सिंपल. सी इंडिया स्टोरी क्या है, अगले 10-15 साल में क्या होने वाला है. ऑफकोर्स द थीम्स में चेंज. Now with standard of living going up, the airline sector is becoming hot. The solar sector is getting hot. But I mean, if you just think of a big picture, it's not very complex and not really कि semiconductor में जाऊंगा ही तो ही पैसा बनेगा. Otherwise, I will not be able to make my money. You don't understand that sector? Fine. Keep it simple. Things which you can understand, which you can visualize 5-10 years down the line. That's it. Keep it simple. You will make decent money. You won't make, and no one, I guess everyone should be happy with 20, 25, 30% return. I mean, it's not that by taking that much of a risk, which you don't understand that sector, you're going to lose big time. So yeah, that's a big picture story, which has worked for me at least.
So, Sandeep and Vineet, Deepak, very pertinent point you just discussed some time ago that they prefer known finance guys. So, even in general context, if we try to understand this thing, like someone from financial background would be more critical rather than a known finance guy when it comes to evaluating the companies, or there is something more to it which we can discuss.
I think you need to know basic finance, right? For sure, you need to know basic finance. I mean, top line क्या है, बिड्डा क्या है, पैट क्या है, अगले 2 साल में क्या होएगा, 5 साल में numbers कैसे change होंगे, debt कितना है. But you don't need a rocket kind of, very complex models or spreadsheets. Many have made money in spite of having non-finance background. In fact, most of the engineers do well in the stock markets. Why? They don't have finance background. But I guess they have that probably clarity or the power to think, what's going to happen next 2, 5, 10 years. I mean, just play simple demographics, India ka kahan hai, trend kahan hai, per capita kahan ja raha hai, and just overlay it with your investment kind of style.
सो प्रिंस मैं अपने पर्सपेक्टिव से बता देता हूँ तो फॉर गुड चंक ऑफ माय इन्वेस्टमेंट लाइफ and probably in future also, so what I might be doing right now more most likely is an aberration than a permanent phase. I stuck to large caps, financials, IT. I understand because I've worked with Infosys Technologies. My wife works there. I have multiple friends who work in IT services. एंड ऑब्वियसली वी हैव वाइडर इकोसिस्टम. तो इंडिया के सब कॉलेजेस के होते हैं ना कि आपके सबके 500 फ्रेंड्स होंगे जो इन्फोसिस, गूगल, सीटीएस और इन सब कंपनीज में काम कर रहे होंगे. सो यू बेसिकली अंडरस्टैंड द सिंपल ऑफशोर ऑनशोर मॉडल, बिलिंग रेट, हाउ प्रोजेक्ट्स कम, हाउ प्रोजेक्ट्स आर एग्जीक्यूटेड, व्हाट आर द एफएक्स चैलेंजेस, व्हाट आर द साइज चैलेंजेस. इस साइज के बाद इन टेक्नोलॉजीज में रूटीन चीजें, राइट, कि जावा का क्या चल रहा है, एसएपी का क्या चल रहा है, एक्सेट्रा. इनफैक्ट आई ऑलवेज थॉट इट इज अ कॉमन नॉलेज till I started interacting some wider investor community and some very big investors started saying कि उनको IT नहीं समझ में आता. तो मैंने कहा सर IT में क्या समझना है, मतलब बड़ा ही सिंपल सा धंधा है, मैन पावर का है. आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट IT सर्विसेज वन, राइट. बट देन आई रियलाइज कि मैंने वो कुछ 5-10 years मेरे इकोसिस्टम है और उसकी होता है ना, आपको डेली वीकेंड की कॉल्स चल रही हैं क्योंकि किसी का प्रोजेक्ट रिलीज है, आपकी वाइफ को ओवरनाइट काम करना पड़ा क्योंकि एक बग आ गया, तो उसकी पूरी टीम काम कर रही है. सो दोज काइंड ऑफ लर्निंग्स व्हिच इज हैपनिंग साइड बाय साइड बिकॉज यू दैट्स हाउ यू हैव बीन लिविंग फॉर अ डिकेड, राइट. So that becomes like a second nature to you, that those basic understanding. But someone who doesn't have exposure, उसके लिए तो obviously वो उसको ये लगेगा कि पता नहीं कैसे काम होता है. So I know a lot of seasoned investor who probably don't have that exposure. They find IT services tricky. I find it very easy, at least to evaluate, right? Doesn't mean I'll surely make super normal money. But then comfort is very high when I invest in IT services because then their unknowns are very less, right? Surprises can happen, but you broadly get it, right? Same with banking. Banking can be tough for a lot of people, but anybody who has done basic finance, economics, ये उसका जो पूरा मॉडल है और जो क्रेडिट साइकिल, हाँ, क्रेडिट साइकिल के डेप्थ समझने के लिए आपको एक्सपीरियंस चाहिए. बट बैंकिंग में पैसा कैसे बनता है, मतलब उसकी बुक क्या है, उसके निम्स क्या हैं, उसमें कितना प्रोविजनिंग होती है, कैसे पैट उतना रिलेवेंट नहीं है बैंक्स को पी से नहीं देखा जा सकता है, पीवाईबी से क्यों देखते हैं, क्यों किसी की 4 टाइम्स है, किसी की 1 टाइम्स है, क्योंकि बुक क्वालिटी पे डिफरेंस है, फ्रेंचाइजी वैल्यू क्या है. तो ये बेसिक चीजें 5 आवर्स में नहीं समझ में आएंगी, बट एक बार आपने 100 आवर्स 200 आवर्स डाल दिए कुछ बड़े बैंक्स में. और इंडिया में लकली क्या हुआ है कि बैंक्स हैज बीन अ प्रॉक्सी, कि इंडिया में मैं बैंक्स में इसलिए भी पैसा डालता था क्योंकि मुझे ज्यादा कुछ समझ में नहीं आता था, बाकी चीजों की सेक्टोरल एक्सपर्टीज मेरी बहुत वीक थी, राइट. Some of my friends who worked on the corporate finance side, they were traveling in India. My first job was traveling in India, that was automobile. But then once I got out of it, went into more IT and then subsequently in the banking kind of a thing for last 10-12 years, मेरा ground connect was very weak, right. The only thing which I tried ever, Deepak sir, was incidentally consumer, because that also you can understand, right. आपको ground में जाके ज्यादा समझने की जरूरत नहीं है.
No,
मैगी बिक
absolutely,
रही है कि नहीं,
absolutely. Yeah.
एचयूएल का बिक रहा है कि नहीं, आईटीसी की सिगरेट बिक रही है कि नहीं, समझ में आ जाएगा. उसके बाद केवल वैल्यूएशन लगाना है और आपको साइकिल्स पकड़ना है. साइकिल भी नहीं है, मतलब एफएमसीजी में तो सिक्लिकलिटी भी नहीं है. आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट द वैल्यूएशन साइकिल्स, नॉट द बिजनेस साइकिल्स. तो वो बहुत इजी बिजनेस है, उसमें थोड़ा बहुत निम्बल किया, लेकिन उसमें वोलेटिलिटी बहुत कम रहती है, रेंज पकड़ना टफ हो जाता था. तो आईटी बैंकिंग करता रहा. In fact, my biggest regret is I was outside of India and I missed some of these very easy money, things like Polycab, Astral. क्यों? क्योंकि जब मैं छोड़ा इंडिया तो ये कंपनियां कुछ नहीं थी, और जब मैंने बाहर आया, मतलब मैं वापस, जब तक वो इतनी बड़ी हुई और रिकॉग्नाइज किया कि मुझे एज ए इन्वेस्टर मुझे फोर्स समझना पड़ा. एस्टर मोटर्स, आपकी आंखों के सामने सभी यंगस्टर्स, लिटरली आई नो, few of my cousins who, I mean, how do you go it, right? You move from bike to two-wheeler, four-wheeler as soon as you start making some money. But then I started seeing some of young cousins who could have easily bought a Maruti, but they were not buying Maruti, they were buying bullets, probably costlier bullets. So that was very surprising. But this happened somewhere around 2012 to 16, 17 era, which I missed as an investor, right? Purely because मैं ground पे उतना alert नहीं था. तो इस तरीके की चीजें पकड़ना बहुत आसान है. और ये जो themes होती हैं, इस तरह के जो turn arounds होते हैं businesses में ना, वो कभी 3 महीने 6 महीने के लिए नहीं होते हैं. वो लिटरली 5-6 साइकिल की एक वर्चुअस साइकिल चलती है. और उसमें जो ईज ऑफ मनी है, बिना एफर्ट डाले कि आपने डाल दिया और वो सिंपली कंपाउंड होता रहा, और बाद में उसका जो मल्टीप्लायर इम्पैक्ट है वो इतना एक्सेप्शनली हाई हो जाता है कि आपको फर्क ही नहीं पड़ता है फिर. तो इसलिए मुझे पर्सनल मेरी स्टाइल वो थी. अब मैं रिसेंटली थोड़ा सेक्टर एग्नोस्टिक हो गया हूं, बिकॉज एंड ऑफ द डे आई एम स्टिल ए वैल्यूएशन पर्सन, राइट? एंड एनीबडी हु क्लेम्स टू बी ए फंडामेंटल इन्वेस्टर, and if he says that I will only invest in hot sectors or complex sector, then he has to think that he's surely not doing valuations. He's assigning value to businesses, not to the balance sheets, right? So if you are really a solid investor, then in a perfect world, you will be industry agnostic. In practice, most people are not. So most investors have liking for certain sectors. But real intellectual challenge which I have taken, and most likely I'm paying a price for that challenge, right? Because for me, I mean, I often say it, and those people who know me, that I often take suboptimal decisions money wise, purely because I want to challenge myself a little more on the intellectual simulation side. So for me, increasing the breadth of industries I was covering became like an intellectual challenge, which I'm currently going through. I don't know what will be the outcome. So right now, most of my bets have become industry agnostic, especially in the kind of investing I'm doing, which is the micro cap, where the industry becomes irrelevant. Early stage, the team, the balance sheet, the cash generating capacity. Another thing, Deepak sir, I mean, I understand the models where cash flow will be negative. In fact, my biggest bet right now is a negative cash flow company. But in spite of that, people simply missing the power of cash, right? कि यार एक पाथिंग आपको दिख रही है कि 2 साल 3 साल के बाद वो कैश जनरेटिंग इंजन बन जाएगा. अगर वो कभी बनना ही नहीं है, और उस तरीके के बिजनेसेस को आप वैल्यूएशंस लगाते जा रहे हो, और एक तो होता है बिजनेस मॉडल में, कई बार आपको प्रमोटर से भी बात करते समय समझ में आ जाएगा कि दिस गाय हैज नो सेंस ऑफ मनी, because he's thinking his market cap as his money. He doesn't realize what he is getting from client, and then cutting off your expenses, what you get at a net level, whether it translates into economic income this year or after 3 years is a different thing. But जब आप काम कर रहे हो तो आपको जो क्लाइंट से पैसा मिल रहा है और आपके जो खर्चे हैं, कॉस्ट ऑफ गुड्स, कॉस्ट ऑफ सर्विसेज एंड टैक्सेस एटसेट्रा, उसका जो बच रहा है वही है ना एक बिजनेसमैन के हाथ में. उसकी मार्केट कैप उसके हाथ में नहीं है ना. But in a boom cycle, because you can sell your shares, you can get new cash. Sometimes not only investors, even promoter forget it, that they are not in a business of selling shares. They are in a business of selling goods and services. तो वो सेट्स भी मुझे दिखते हैं तो मैं तुरंत ऑब्वियसली बैक ऑफ हो जाता हूँ ऐसे प्रमोटर्स, ऐसी आइडियाज से, इररेस्पेक्टिव ऑफ हॉट सेक्टर्स, कोल्ड सेक्टर, डजंट मैटर. इनफैक्ट मोस्ट ऑफ दीज बोलते हैं ना, बेसिक्स मिस करने की टेंडेंसी वही होगी जब आप हॉट सेक्टर में होगे. If you're in a cold sector, in a sector which no one wants to touch, you don't even have a luxury to forget basics, right? You only forget basic when music is loud, when there is a lot of crowd and big party going on, and that's often happens in either very complex sectors, or where the discussions are very complex, and that's why the basics are getting lost. तो अभी मैं थोड़ा सा डिस्ट्रैक्ट हो रहा हूँ प्रिंस. आज ही मैं सुबह नवल की भी स्पीच सुन रहा था. वेरी गुड स्पीच. मैंने टैग भी की है, आप उसमें देखिएगा, नेटवर्क कॉन्फ्रेंस में बाला की उसने बोला है. नवल का आप देखो तो 1 मिलियन उसके फॉलोअर है, और उसकी बुक भी केवल एक है, और इतनी सिंपल सी छोटी सी बुक है. ही इज लेजेंड इन थॉट अमंग the people who think are basically thought leaders, right? He's legend because he always says only one line. आप उसकी केवल ट्वीट उसमें जाओ और देखते चले जाओ तो वो केवल एक एक लाइन बोलेगा, और इट इज ऑलमोस्ट लाइक सोक्रेट्स एंड एरिस्टोटल. उस लेवल पे नहीं ले जाना चाहता हूं, बट आई एम जस्ट सेइंग, आप उनका सोचोगे तो एक एक लाइन के भी इतने शेड्स है ना कि आप डीप पे सोचते चले जाओगे. एंड व्हाई डिड आई स्टार्टेड टॉकिंग अबाउट हिम? बिकॉज every great idea by nature is very simple. If it requires 5 pages to explain something, that means it was never a solid idea. इसी में अब अगला स्विच कर देता हूं प्रिंस। अमेजोन में भी ये फेमस है कि no new project, no meetings can run in 10 pages, 20 pages, 40 pages, and that is that famous I think Mark Twain said it, or maybe someone else said it, and people assign it to Mark Twain. That I don't know. I didn't have the time to write a long, short letter, so I ended up writing a long letter, something like that. So basically, basically you cannot summarize something in very simple word purely because you don't get it, you don't understand it. And something similar is also said by Femin, also again a very famous scientist and a thought leader. But back to you, Prince.
It's like true that people ignore simplicity or undervalue simplicity, and they cherish complexity, but otherwise around has been a better thing. So Vineet, from business point of view, and Deepak, from like investor standpoint, as we were speaking about the conglomerates or simple businesses, right? So I mean, from a business point of view, what do you think trigger for a business to I mean diversify into so many things, whereas if they can focus on few niche or certain pockets within the business, they would have done better. So from a businessman point of view, what is the thought process that goes behind? And for Deepak, it's like I mean obviously even valuation of the complex businesses, some of the parts is difficult in comparison to the simple businesses. So, I mean, do you believe if we have some data that the conglomerates has, I mean, they haven't made that much money as simple businesses have made for investors?
It depends, Prince. So, in my banking days, I was part of the team which advised Tata Steel to acquire Chorus. I was part of the deal where we advised Suzlon buying Repower. And both these acquisitions just led them to almost, I mean, not in Tata's case, Suzlon got literally bankrupt. But Tata's, on the other hand, is still struggling with Chorus acquisition. On the same side, Tata Motors acquired Land Rover Jaguar, and it's really done very well. So I guess the business cycles also depend when you're investing. Whether Suzlon was probably much ahead of the curve, uh, and they bought something which was so big for them to digest, so it didn't work out as a conglomerate. Uh, Tata, of course, with big balance sheet, they were able to survive. So it's and even now Tata Motors with operations in so many geographies, and analysts also struggle how to value them, how to do the sum of parts, because India में क्या हो रहा है, China में क्या हो रहा है, UK में क्या हो रहा है, Europe में क्या हो रहा है. It becomes very complex, and usually analysts or investor community don't like very complex calculations or modeling, because how do you model such a complex business? So yeah, I guess simplicity many times wins over a very complex, very spread out business.
Right. I think Vineet got dropped. Sandeep, you want to add something to
नहीं, कॉन्ग्लोमरेट का काफी इंटरेस्टिंग डिस्कशन है, उस पर एक छोटा सा शेड ऐड कर देता हूँ. सो दिस कॉन्ग्लोमरेट इन्वेस्टिंग बिकेम वेरी पॉपुलर इन यूएसए इन 1980s एटसेट्रा. सो उस समय बिग बिकेम बिगर because there was lot of funding by corporate bond guys. तो जैसे जैसा कुछ हद तक आप इंडिया में भी इस समय देख रहे हो, एंड देर आर नॉन फाइनेंशियल रीजंस आल्सो दैट, राइट, कि 3-4 बिग हाउसेस ही सब कुछ कर रहे हैं, राइट. सो टाटा वंस दे बिकेम ब्रांड, और इंडिया में अदानी है, अंबानी है, कि यू कैन सी देम लिटरली डूइंग एवरीथिंग एवरीवेयर, राइट, बिकॉज देन it is almost as if doing business is business agnostic. It's a function of your processes, your money, power, or more than power, let me put it like your availability of funding and your certain styles, right? So that was also the thinking in USA. USA market is much more fairer, more capitalistic. Now those conglomerates started getting suboptimal business returns followed by suboptimal stock returns also. So the theory got reversed. तो यूएसए में आज आप उतने बड़े बड़े कॉन्ग्लोमरेट्स नहीं देखोगे. तो जो वर्ल्ड की बड़ी फॉर्च्यून 500 कंपनीज है आप देखोगे, वो सारी की सारी एक सेक्टर में बहुत बड़ी हैं. तो इकोनॉमीज ऑफ स्केल पे तो उन्होंने फोकस किया, स्कोप पे उतना नहीं हुआ, इवन दो लॉजिकल है. लॉजिकल कैसे है? इकोनॉमीज ऑफ स्कोप का एंगल क्या है कि जब आप कई बार आपको ज्योग्राफी एक्सपैंड करना टफ है. जैसे डीमार्ट के पास ये भी तो चॉइस थी ना कि वो अपैरल्स में बहुत ज्यादा कोई एक लाइफ स्टाइल में ऊपर चले जाए सेगमेंट में. उन्होंने एक प्राइस पॉइंट्स पकड़ा हुआ है. उसके लिए सबसे पहले उन्होंने महाराष्ट्र कैप्चर किया क्लस्टर के थ्रू, फिर गुजरात किया और उसके बाद पैन इंडिया चले गए. वो ये भी कर सकते थे कि नहीं यार, महाराष्ट्र गुजरात मेरी डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन स्ट्रांग है, डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन इज माई मोट, तो मैं अब प्राइस पॉइंट्स में ऊपर भी चला जाऊंगा या प्रोडक्ट कैटेगरीज में चला जाऊंगा या कोई डिफरेंट रिटेल स्टाइल पकड़ सकता हूँ, व्हाइट गुड्स में जा सकता हूँ, व्हाइट लेबलिंग करा सकता हूँ. बट दे डिडंट डू इट, राइट. तो अगर आप फॉर्च्यून 500 में देखो जो बिजनेसेस सर्वाइव किए और बड़े हुए, तो वो सब सिंगल इंडस्ट्रीज के ज्यादा मिलेंगे, कॉन्ग्लोमरेट्स कम मिलेंगे. कॉन्ग्लोमरेट्स धीरे धीरे खत्म होने लगे. उसकी एक लॉजिक थी ग्लोबली, इंडिया में अभी नहीं है, कि एट सम स्टेज इन्वेस्टर सिंपली सेड बिजनेस डाइवर्सिफिकेशन इज मोर रिस्की देन द इन्वेस्टमेंट डाइवर्सिफिकेशन. सो बिजनेस डाइवर्सिफिकेशन करने के लिए आप एक मैनेजमेंट को जो कि विच इज वेरी गुड इन लेट्स से स्टील मेकिंग, यू आर आस्किंग देम टू ऑल्सो डू कॉपर, राइट. एंड इफ दे आर गुड इन कॉपर, यू आर ऑल्सो आस्किंग देम टू कि आप ईपीसी का भी कुछ काम कर लो ना सर, विच इज टफर. अगर मुझे एज ए इन्वेस्टर डाइवर्सिफिकेशन चाहिए तो मैं सिंपली उस बिजनेस को वाया मल्टीपल स्टॉक्स के थ्रू ले लूंगा. और ये काम धीरे धीरे बड़े बिजनेसेस भी करने लगे. तो अदानी ग्रुप का जो सबसे बड़ी सक्सेस रही है, इवन दो आई एम नॉट अ फैन एंड नेवर ए इन्वेस्टर, maybe 10 years back I would have bought Adani Ports little bit here and there, but after that I just said no. And in spite of being a big fan of current government, so it's not a political call in a way. So, but what they have interestingly did the incubation part, right? अदानी ग्रुप पूरा खड़ा कैसे हुआ है? अदानी इंटरप्राइज के अंदर वो इंक्यूबेट करते हैं, फिर वो साइड में लिस्ट कराते हैं, राइट. समथिंग सिमिलर विच रिलायंस डिडंट डू सो फॉर बट लाइकली टू डू इन फ्यूचर. So Reliance, as we speak, is going towards probably breaking Reliance Industries into 3 parts. And then from there, and they're also obviously right now housing roughly 500 to 1000 startups. So many people don't realize that India ka sabse bada VC fund is Reliance Industries. So anybody who works in a startup will probably understand it. India ka, I'm repeating it again, biggest venture fund right now in India is Reliance Industries. Across technologies, across consumer, across any categories. So they just keep on, buying these young powers, young ideas, everything, and they start housing it inside. At some stage, they will create these kind of entities, demerged entities. So Reliance Jio Financials VC फंडेड उन सबसे नहीं है, बट उन्होंने कैपेबिलिटीज इन हाउस बनाई होंगी और उसके बाद रिलायंस जियो फाइनेंशियल से स्टार्ट किया. सो कमिंग बैक टू द पॉइंट, कॉन्ग्लोमरेट्स का जमाना इसलिए भी चला गया क्योंकि कैपिटल मार्केट नच करता है इन सब बिजनेसेस को कि अगर आपको चलाना भी है, लेट्स से आप एज अदानी चलाना भी चाहते हो कि गैस भी करना है, आपको पोर्ट भी करना है, एविएशन भी करना है, तो सेपरेट लिस्टेड एंटिटी करो जिससे कि आपका होल्डिंग पीरियड, होल्डिंग कंपनी डिस्काउंट ना लगे. So more money, so just to give the closing comment, in capital market recent decades, more money has been made via demergers than mergers. And that is why the last week's joke, someone said कि HDFC को demerge कर देना चाहिए after seeing what happened with the Bajaj. So the value got distorted because of merger, and value is being created wherever the demerger is happening. Again, that brings back to the original point. Simpler a business to run and understand, more value it is likely to create.
Just on that, Sandeep, a very simple example which we all can relate is Mahindra's versus Tata Motors. Tata Motors, they've done so much here and there, GVR, China, this and that. The market caps today is the same as Mahindra and Mahindra. Mahindra has been very clear, not to focus in India. That's my key market. They have done very well versus Tata Motors.
Right, Deepak. So, Vineet, your perspective from a businessman point of view, I mean, the capital allocation is the most important thing when it comes to business, right? How the thought process goes behind it.
Sure. So like you rightly said, Prince, इसमें जो संदीप भाई ने भी बोला ना, so a lot of especially in this bull run, a lot of promoters forget कि उनका जो business है, that is getting more business from their existing client, adding new clients, getting their payments on time, and making more profits for the organization, keeping their employees happy, keeping their suppliers happy, making the payments on time. So ये जो पूरी साइकिल जब बराबर चलती है, तभी आपका जो इम्पैक्ट है, that will show up in the results of the company, and that would hopefully lead to better market capitalization, growth in share prices and so on. इसमें Prince, let me also wear my other hat. So पहले I worked as a business consultant. Sandeep bhai would know. So हम लोगों ने ITC को consult किया था. This is when ITC was mostly into cigarettes only, and it was a major cash cow for them. और उन्हें ये पता था कि हमारे पास कैश पाइल काफी है, बट जो हम बिजनेस में है सिगरेट्स टोबैको का है, दैट इज अंडर सीवियर रेगुलेशन. एंड जैसे आगे हुआ भी, सो ऑल द मार्केटिंग एक्टिविटीज वर स्टॉप्ड. अब कंपटीशन भी बढ़ रहा है, सो दे वांटेड टू डाइवर्सिफाई एंड लुक एट न्यूअर अपॉर्चुनिटीज. तो उसमें जैसे संदीप भाई ने बोला, दे आइडेंटिफाइड व्हाट इज आर की स्ट्रेंथ. सो उनका की स्ट्रेंथ तभी डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन था. सो दे कुड रीच more number of shops than maybe a Unilever could through their cigarette channel. They were also present in pan shops जहाँ पे उस टाइम पे FMCG companies were not there. So इसीलिए they identified कि हमारे next step would be to get into FMCG product. And उसमें as a business consultant, I mean when I was wearing my earlier hat, we helped them look at what categories to enter, what should be their value prop, how to go about production, what should be in house, what can be outsourced. So उसमें भी through simplicity, because they understood कि हमें सिर्फ distribution पे focus करना है, nothing else. They started that business, and it is fairly challenging as a business because FMCG में in each category there is a market leader. तो जैसे आप हेयर ऑयल में देखेंगे तो पैराशूट, मैरिको इज देयर. आप बाकी प्रोडक्ट कैटेगरीज में देखेंगे, बिस्किट्स में देखेंगे तो देयर इज ब्रिटानिया, देयर इज पार्ले. बट उसके बाद भी ओवर अ पीरियड ऑफ टाइम दे हैव बीन एबल टू एस्टैब्लिश देमसेल्व्स इन अ मीनिंगफुल वे. उनके मार्केट शेयर अब अच्छे हो गए हैं. धीरे धीरे द एफएमसीजी बिजनेस इज टर्निंग कैश पॉजिटिव ऑल्सो. सो उस सेंस में ऑल्दो इट हैज बीन अ स्लो मूवर, इट हैज बीन moving in the right direction.
So, I mean, Sandeep, one reason which I think, like over a period of time, someone into one business segment, and if that matures in the sense, as Vineet was talking about, say, the hair oil space, right? The penetration is across India, if specifically we are talking India. In that case, for the company to grow more, it has to come with the premium products, or it has to diversify its other product segments. So that is one reason which I believe is also there for these companies to go into different business segments. Is that interpretation right?
Yes, I understood your question. Let me try to answer it in a way. In fact, as you know, right, on weekends I usually end up doing a lot of these investment discussion, private, public. Was talking for a private discussion. Usually, sometimes some of the investors in my circle started feeling कि I'm a big fan of small companies. I said no. I mean, I am in a way ideologically here and there, but more importantly, I'm still here to make money. And then when we talk about this micro cap booms and companies reporting exceptionally high growth, sometimes we start believing that a small company has some kind of a special fundamental right to do better than larger company. That is a fundamentally flawed understanding or an argument. You have to understand why some companies are able to grow faster than the bigger companies. It is not because they are small. Being small is just the starting point. But if you are trying to compete to grow to bigger players, then at very early stage, then more often than not you will fail. You won't be, because then you are simply saying कि मैं बहुत weak हूँ on every front और मैं straight away head on लूंगा एक बहुत बड़े players को. It doesn't work that way. So mostly small companies are doing well if the space is not crowded by bigger player. So this company, in example, had 5 product range, was getting some money, decent 70% revenue from a category where यहाँ से उनकी growth के लिए उनको अपने से 10 times bigger player को हराना पड़ेगा, जो कि हो सकता है, but that will be exceptional story. That's not a base case. Compared to 4 other categories, which is crowded by less thing. So even though the concerned gentleman was of, very gung-ho, very confident, and he may still do that, he was of an opinion that I'll focus on my, number one product rather than focusing on 2, 3, 4. I was not very sure. So the point is, जैसे अभी विनीत ने बोला कि आईटीसी ने फोकस किया कि मेरी स्ट्रेंथ क्या है, डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन, तो उन्होंने प्रोडक्ट एक्सपैंड कर दिया. किसी की स्ट्रेंथ है प्रोडक्ट, तो वो ज्योग्राफी एक्सपैंड कर देगा. किसी की स्ट्रेंथ है, जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल इंडिया में सो फार रिलायंस हैज फेल्ड ऑन एनीथिंग ऑन कंज्यूमर. सिंपल. जबकि वो अर्ली, सोचिए विमल, आप लोगों को पता नहीं कितने लोगों को याद है या पता भी है, याद तो क्या होगा बट पता होगा एटलीस्ट, कि they ran a very popular brand. In fact, I've heard that they are trying to relaunch that, Vimal Shootings, right? But Reliance never was a consumer play because they were big industrial behemoth who know how to do deep projects of 5 years, 7 years, can get conducive policy supports and deep fundings. They're amazing treasury managers, right? On the contrary, anything which is Tata, इंडिया में लोग सिंपली ब्लाइंडली खरीद लेते हैं. आज हम कोई नया सॉल्ट किसी का लेंगे नहीं. रिलायंस का सॉल्ट आएगा, कोई नहीं टच करेगा. मतलब मे बी दे हैव सॉफ्टेंड देयर इमेज अ लॉट. इनफैक्ट अ लॉट ऑफ कल्चरल थिंग्स एंड दे आर डूइंग, आई फील it's also their indirect attempt to become a consumer name kind of a thing, that brand recall, right, within Indian mindset. But Tata, उनको कुछ नहीं करना है. They are bound to become a consumer play. So their ability to succeed in Tata consumer is much much easier than, let's say, a Reliance consumer kind of a thing. तो हर कंपनी और हर इकोसिस्टम को अपना अपनी स्ट्रेंथ समझनी पड़ती है. तो इसका स्ट्रेट आंसर कभी प्रिंस नहीं हो सकता है कि व्हाट इज इजियर. शुड वी गो फॉर ज्योग्राफी एक्सपेंशन, शुड वी गो फॉर प्रोडक्ट एक्सपेंशन, शुड वी गो फॉर द वैल्यू प्रोपोजिशन. इफ योर सक्सेस इज अबाउट वैल्यू प्रोपोजिशन, सडनली यू कैन नॉट एक्सपेक्ट टू क्रैक इनटू प्रीमियम. चलो मैं एक एग्जांपल देता हूँ. मेरी फर्स्ट जॉब का, मारुति वाज ऑलवेज 50% market share. In fact, at some point in time, they were 55-60%. But they were never able to crack the luxury. In fact, till date, they are struggling. Why? Because इंडिया में पहली कार हमेशा आदमी, बैक इन द डेज, अभी का अब जमाना काफी बदल गया. I'm talking about 2010s and maybe even up to 2015. इंडिया में हर आदमी की हिम्मत ही नहीं पड़ती थी कि पहली कार फोर्ड ले ले. क्यों? क्योंकि उसका फियर ये होता था कि इसकी सर्विसिंग कैसे होगी, इसकी रीसेल वैल्यू कैसे मिलेगी, इसका स्पेयर पार्ट मिलेगा कि नहीं. And that's why most of these American brands or European brands struggled in India, because India needed that confidence for the first car. बट प्रॉब्लम ये थी प्रिंस की, जब भी आदमी अपग्रेड करता था वो सेकंड कार कभी मारुति नहीं लेना चाहता था. सेकंड कैन बी द सेकंड कार while नॉट सेलिंग द फर्स्ट, और इट कैन बी एन अपग्रेड ऑल्सो, कि अब मेरी सैलरी ज्यादा हो गई है, मेरे पास पैसे ज्यादा हो गए, तो कभी मारुति नहीं लेगा. दैट इज बिकॉज वंस यू हैव क्रिएटेड अ ब्रांड अराउंड वैल्यू, यू कैन नॉट सिंपली मेक अ डिफरेंट ब्रांड अराउंड प्रीमियम. और इसके लिए उन्होंने सिंपली वो किया जो टोयोटा ने आज से 20-30 साल पहले ही कर दिया. सो मोस्ट पीपल माइट बी नोइंग दैट लेक्सस इज अ बिग लग्जरी ब्रांड ओन्ड बाय टोयोटा, बट इट इज लिटरली रन इन पैरेलल. So much so, a lot of consumers in places like US etc. don't even know that it is a Toyota company. But वो Lexus की अलग, पूरी की पूरी चेन पूरी अलग है. And that's what, to the limited success, Maruti tried doing via Nexus. तो जब तक उन्होंने डीलरशिप नहीं की, जस्ट सेम डीलरशिप से वो ऑल्टो और 30 लाख की गाड़ी नहीं बेच सकते. देयर इज नो वे दे कैन डू इट, राइट? तो अगेन एवरीवन हैज टू अंडरस्टैंड इट्स पोजीशनिंग. बहुत ज्यादा मार्केटिंग जर्गन हो जाएगा और बिजनेस एनालिसिस हो जाएगी. नथिंग रॉन्ग विद दैट, बट मेरे ख्याल से प्रिंस आपके स्पेसेस में मैक्सिमम टाइम इन्वेस्टर्स आते हैं तो बोर हो जाएंगे बिजनेस डिस्कशन में. बट दोज आर ऑलवेज गुड. इनफैक्ट कल जब वो समीर अरोड़ा का फेस टू फेस देख रहा था, it's always good to hear him. He made a very solid point. I mean, most of the youngsters who ask कैसे करें, they are so focused on trying to analyze stock instead of trying to analyze a business. And how would you even analyze a business? Either you become 20-30 years old, work as a management consultant, do multiple geographies, multiple countries, multiple businesses. वो सब करने में 20 साल लगेगा, वो आपके पास समय नहीं है. सो द ओनली फास्ट कट और शॉर्टकट टू डू दैट इज टू जस्ट रीड टन्स ऑफ बिजनेस बायोग्राफीज. सिंपली उठा करके आज मुझे किसी को 20s में एडवाइस करनी हो, जस्ट बाय द स्टोरी ऑफ मैकडोनल्ड्स, वॉलमार्ट, टोयोटा, मारुति, HDFC, just read through it. If you can read those 35, 40, 50 books, then you will understand how companies are made and how companies are killed or survive, or इवन बहुत सारी 90s या 2000 की पॉपुलर कंपनीज आर नो मोर. तो जब तक वो अंडरस्टैंडिंग नहीं आएगी, हम फंडामेंटल इन्वेस्टिंग इज नॉट अबाउट कि पी कितना है, कितना एक्सपैंड हो सकता है. दैट्स द फाइनल स्टेप, दैट्स नॉट द स्टार्टिंग स्टेप.
So, Sandeep, although a little out of context to today's topic, but lately I had gone through one video, love China or hate China, but you cannot ignore China. So, on those lines, I mean, broadly, I mean, everything, every business which we are in, majority of them get impacted by China in one form or the other. So, you guys buy that statement, and how relevant China will remain for a next decade per se in such context. I mean, we as a country are growing on all the fronts, but again, to understand the landscape, like some thoughts from all
Prince,
three of
I'll
you.
toss it first to Vineet because his sector is very China dependent, right? So he has to always factor in China, and then to Deepak. So Vineet.
Sure, thanks Sandeep. So इसमें आपने जैसे हम लोग डिस्कस कर रहे थे ना, आई थिंक चाइना का इम्पैक्ट प्रिंस इज गोइंग टू स्टे, मतलब आई डोंट थिंक इट इज गोइंग टू गो अवे एनी टाइम सून. एंड हम लोग केमिकल्स में वी आर फेसिंग इट ऑन अ डे टू डे बेसिस. सो अब जैसे हम लोग का जो प्रोडक्ट है, द केमिकल दैट वी मेक विच इज यूज्ड इन फार्मास्यूटिकल, इन एक्सप्लोजिव्स, इट्स आल्सो यूज्ड इन एयरबैग मैन्युफैक्चरिंग, जो कार में एयरबैग्स आते हैं, इन दैट आल्सो आवर प्रोडक्ट इज यूज्ड. So इसमें what China now is doing is they are making this product. Earlier it was being consumed in their own country. अब वहाँ consume नहीं हो रहा है, तो they are exporting it to India and selling it at very cheap throwaway prices. China में, as we know, power is subsidized. Labor में subsidy मिलती है. So it's not really possible for manufacturers like us sitting in India to compete on them on a price parity basis. So the only calling card we have is product quality, which is far superior to what China has to offer. So वो एक चीज है. But to the larger question, in chemicals, in other sectors also, China is something which we cannot ignore. So इसमें the only help that we can get is from the government side, which is in terms of having anti-dumping duty and so on and so forth. But इसमें हमें ये भी समझना पड़ेगा कि there is so much which is already there on the plate of the government officials, and also they are not experts of say chemical sector, or they are not experts of pharmaceutical API सेक्टर. सो उन्हें उतना समझ में भी नहीं आता, एंड बाय द टाइम वो समझेंगे या दे रिएक्ट, इट माइट बी डिफिकल्ट फॉर कंपनीज टू ओवरकम. सो इसीलिए जो आई थिंक जो इनिशियल जैसे मैंने आपसे डिस्कस जब किया था, सो यू नीड टू डाइवर्सिफाई इन टर्म्स ऑफ ज्योग्राफी, इन टर्म्स ऑफ कस्टमर. हर इंडस्ट्री का भी एक साइकिल होता है. तो जैसे हम जब फार्मास्यूटिकल में भी सप्लाई करते हैं, तो देर इज अ साइकिल. सो कई बार ऐसे होता है कि इन अ क्वार्टर द कंजम्पशन गोज अप बाय 50%. कई क्वार्टर ऐसे भी होते हैं जहां 50% रिडक्शन आ जाता है. तो वहां पे हमें इंडस्ट्रियल डाइवर्सिफिकेशन है, वो हमें हेल्प करती है. सिमिलरली जोग्राफिकल डाइवर्सिफिकेशन, कई बार अब जैसे कोविड का इम्पैक्ट आया तो लॉट ऑफ कंट्रीज वर शट डाउन, तो वहां पे ऑब्वियसली हमारे प्रोडक्ट कंजम्पशन भी इट केम डाउन टू जीरो. बट देयर वर सम अदर कंट्रीज विच वर स्टिल वर्किंग, जहाँ काम ठीक चल रहा था. तो हम जो हमारा प्रोडक्शन था, इंस्टेड ऑफ इट लाइंग एट द फैक्ट्री, वी वर एबल टू शिप इट टू these newer locations, maybe at a lower margin, but at least the business cycle was running. So इसीलिए इस सब में it's very important to get in diversification, which could be around geography, around different industries that you are servicing. और हर इंडस्ट्री का जो रिक्वायरमेंट होता है प्रोडक्ट का, वो स्लाइटली डिफरेंट रहेगा in terms of specification, in terms of the testing that they carry out. अब जैसे जो एयरबैग में हमारा प्रोडक्ट यूज होता है, उसमें द की पैरामीटर इज इट शुड बी फ्री फ्लोइंग, बिकॉज अगर आपका उसमें लम्प्स बन जाते हैं, तो अगर कभी भी एक्सीडेंटल इम्पैक्ट होगा, तो द एयरबैग विल नॉट ओपन अप द वे इट शुड एंड विल नॉट प्रोवाइड द नेसेसरी प्रोटेक्शन. तो इसलिए जब हम लोग प्रोडक्ट बनाते हैं एयरबैग सेगमेंट के लिए स्पेसिफिकली, we need to make sure that it is free flowing in nature, so that if and when there is an accident, the product can function the way it's supposed to. Yeah, Prince.
Right. So before Sandeep and Deepak also share some data on, do not remember fully, but there was some chart which was showing the in the context of US. So China, largest exporter to US. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. So initially, when the labor cost in China was lower, so there were different. Now the labor cost is also increasing in China. On those lines, I mean, if there is something to discuss, I would be happy. I was trying to find that graph to understand the thing fully, but I'll try. And meanwhile, we can, Sandeep, if you want to share something on that.
No, see, first of all, China industry, जहाँ पे भी manufacturing है, वहाँ पे China will never go away, right? एंड इनफैक्ट इस समय जो चाइना+1 बोलते हैं, या इवन जो भी जितना PLI या इवन यूएस में भी कल कल वी वर इन ए प्राइवेट कॉल, someone talked about Biosecure Act, right? A good guy actually talked about a Biosecure Act. तो ये जितना भी हो रहा है वो नॉन इकोनॉमिक हो रहा है. जितना इकोनॉमिक्स के हिसाब से, obviously it was a distorted economics by China because most of their industries were state funded, 1%, 2%, where losses etc. didn't matter, right? Similarly labor subsidy. तो वो बहुत बड़ा टॉपिक है प्रिंस, मतलब आई डोंट थिंक वी कैन डू जस्टिस, क्योंकि फिर आपको ग्लोबल ट्रेड समझना पड़ेगा, टैरिफ समझना पड़ेगा, इम्प्लीकेशन समझना पड़ेगा, और मूविंग पार्ट्स हैं अराउंड.
So, Sandeep, I just got the context. I mean, please take a time. I pinned it to the spaces. Ravindra Bhandari has shared that graph. So maybe if
हाँ,
something. Meanwhile, Deepak,
दीपक,
any thoughts?
या
Yeah.
दीपक सर प्लीज.
So the way I think that Indian entrepreneurs have huge opportunity ahead because China, as we discussed, the labor costs are going up. They will slowly move out of that low cost production which they used to export to the global markets until now. And that's where the space Indians can step in. Of course, you need to have the infrastructure and the support mechanisms around that. Because China, what China is doing right now, they are slowly going to move to the higher end of sophistication in terms of manufacturing. So they will be more on the semiconductors, more on the drones, more on the technology, more on AI. Because at 12,500 per capita, they can't do that small end manufacturing anymore. They won't be able to compete. And that's where Indian entrepreneurs have the opportunity. So that's my take on China. And again, just to step back in terms of business complexity and investment style, I mean, my last bit on that. There are many sectors in India which are completely protected from these overseas onslaught, be it dumping or be it China or be it anywhere. Simple example, we are at 2,500 per capita. We'll be at 5,000, 7,000. The biggest sector going forward uh, within India, which will be completely protected, is wealth management, private banking, the stock broking or the depository. I mean, look at NSE. The stock has doubled. It's safest stock. I mean, 6, 7, 8 months, it's doubled. I mean, no one will come from China and take up a stock exchange in India. I think simplicity again, overtakes everything. So yeah.
Yes, Sandeep.
No, I think that's it from my side, Prince. So more or less we have discussed pretty much all sides possible. I mean, you can obviously such discussion can be carried hours for hours also, but if any questions, I'm happy to take.
I, let me once check the comments if there would be any relevant question we take. Otherwise, we'll close for the day.
Actually, I just saw a comment tag to me, question tag to me. Nagendra is saying when we want to invest in stocks, we don't see rear mirror. But when we talk about markets and economy, we bring ocean of past knowledge and make prediction about beer, recession, etc. Why is this contrarian perception in markets? Actually, good question. So we always say valuations are front forward looking, not the backward looking, right? So the discussion which we do about past knowledge or how cycles work is basically around the first principles, not on the company per se. So no one says just because a company has done well in last 5 years will do well in next 5 years. So that's the argument is made for one specific company or one specific stock or earnings of that company, or whether it is stock price, which often is correlated also. So from that perspective, people always say don't look into rear mm, mirror, always try to look at the front screen. But when it comes to developing investment style, trying to how to look about investment cycles, business cycles, etc., naturally one has to look into past to understand how it works. Because again, bigger money is lost by, this is a popular joke also, right? They always say this time is different in markets, and almost every time this time is never different, and people lose money believing in that revolutionary slogan called this time is different. So that's why veterans will always remind to look into past just to get your first principles right. And what are those first principles? Basically, your fundamental blocks. How you look into your investment style. Again, you can have any kind of a style, but it cannot be simply that past didn't matter, history doesn't matter. Suddenly, I landed in 2024. I made some money, and I'm only forward looking in terms of my approach towards market. So for developing approach, one has to look backwards for learning. For specifically picking a company or in a stock, obviously you have to be forward looking.
Totally agree on that, Sandeep. And thank you so much, Deepak, Vineet, and Sandeep, and for our audience to join us on Sunday evening. And these discussion definitely provides us an opportunity to expand our horizon, which help not directly but